So I'm joined today by Stuart Robinson, who's our biomechanics and chiropractic assessor here at Precision Golf, and we're going to talk about all things, a bit of warming up, but also kind of upper body injuries. We're going to look at the two most common things that we see and go through what you can do to help prevent those and hopefully get rid of those for playing golf on the course. So these are the two positions most of us spend our working weeks. That or that. Neither of which, note the wonderful posture, are really that good. And so what's that going to do for our golf?
Well, it's going to make things difficult, Simon. You're absolutely right. Far too many of us spend a lot of time sat like this. Essentially, that's rounding the mid-back and the shoulders. It makes it far more difficult to turn and rotate and to have the freedom of movement that we need around the shoulders. It also tends to mean that the hips end up stiffening up as well, and the hips and the mid-back are actually the key areas for rotation in the golf swing. So unfortunately, the lower back, which is clearly the area in between the hips and the mid-back, is often the area that ends up taking the strain. And when we look at the anatomy of the spine, we can see that the lower back joints actually lie pretty much vertical. So they provide plenty of forwards-backwards movement, but very little rotation. So if you start asking those joints to rotate a lot because the hips and the mid-back aren't turning well, that can be a recipe for problems. And so even just simply warming up before you go and play, that can be really helpful in recognition of the fact that it is basically the antithesis of this when you're coming to want to turn like that. The other thing to say is the neck. People don't always think about the neck, but if you think about making a good backswing, I'm actually turning over my left shoulder here, so I effectively need 90 degrees of rotation. If we haven't got that, and lots of people don't have it, again, they're going to find that starts to cause some strain here. So loosening up the spine and obviously the shoulders, we clearly need good shoulder mobility as well. That's really important. So lots of people who are stiff, if they're a right-handed player, they might find they get the club across the line at the top, while they don't have the external rotation in the right shoulder very often. And that can obviously be an issue. Or if they're struggling to shallow the path of the club on the way down, again, it's the same thing.
But I think these are often things that we see in the Bay where people attribute to their swings and a lack of technique, potentially, rather than actually looking at themselves and going, well, actually, do I have the physical ability to make those moves? And so you could end up trying desperately to improve your swing, to try to make those moves happen, but it's like bashing your head against a brick wall. It's actually physically almost impossible to do. And then all that happens is you potentially end up aggravating an injury. And as you quite rightly said, so many of these restrictions refer movement to the wrong place that then creates another injury.
Yes, yeah, and all sorts of technical issues. You know, you'll often see people who are told, oh, well, they're moving their head in the backswing. Well, the body's just trying to find the path of least resistance. If someone's a reasonable golfer and they know that they need to get here, there are only 3 planes of movement. So if they can't achieve it in rotation, very often what happens is they end up extending the spine. So then they've got that vertical oscillation. They're trying to drop down to the golf ball, and then they find they either thin it or fat it, but also it's not a very powerful mechanical movement because they want to obviously be driving up and rotating into impact using the biggest, strongest muscles of the body, but instead their altimeter's trying to tell them to get back down to the bottom of the arc to find the golf ball again. So.
An altimeter, you never knew you had one of those, did you? So I think, Stuart, what would you say are the two most common injuries that amateur golfers come up against?
So for amateurs, lower back pain and then neck pain. In professionals tends to be wrists, but most amateurs don't practice enough for the wrists to be an issue, although we do know a lot of golf enthusiasts who will go and bash an awful lot of balls, particularly on driving range mats, and in a very short space of time, perhaps when they're trying to work on their swing and they've suddenly really got the mojo for golf, and we find that they end up getting overuse injuries because they suddenly do a huge amount of practice and there's a lot of strain hitting into mats.
So from a lower back point of view, I think that's probably what I hear in the Bay the most. What would you say are the real keys to preventing it? I mean, there's managing an issue that's already there. But in terms of actually trying to ensure you don't get one in the first place, what would you focus on?
Well, I think warming up is the key thing. Too many golfers probably arrive at the course and that might only be 20 minutes before they tee off, or perhaps they will go straight into the bar and have a coffee and then, you know, go and hit a couple of putts and walk to the first tee. And their bodies just simply aren't ready for doing something that's actually pretty physically taxing. You know, for 1 second or so, the golf swing's extremely strenuous on the body. So we want to make sure that the muscles are warmed up, the joints are loosened up, and people are ready to play. And of course, then they're more likely to play the first 4 or 5 holes well, rather than perhaps dropping shots that they might
how often
otherwise.
do you hear, oh, it took me 4 or 5 holes to get into it, and then it was fine. So can you show us a few of the best things to do for that lower back to get loosened up?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I would start out just with doing some simple rotational movements, and you can just hold on to a golf club and literally just do this. So we sometimes call this threading the needle. You can do this on all fours actually, but just loosening up a little bit of rotation like that. You can obviously put the club behind your head and just gently start to work the hips as well as the shoulders, and then you can obviously get yourself into golf posture and start to work that way. If you want to bring in the lower half a little bit as well, just a little bit of a stride and then some rotation, and then same thing on the other side. So I mean, you can obviously be doing all of this stuff whilst you're just chatting to your playing partners. Might want to just loosen up with a little bit of lateral flexion like this as well. So it's just really simple, intuitive movement. If people are finding that the muscles are a bit tight and a bit stiff, then even just doing a standing Superman, again, you know, you can just be holding on to a golf club. It doesn't have to be anything particularly onerous, but this just gets the back muscles and the glute muscles working a bit.
As I was going to say, is you're starting to use them before you're trying to fire them
Absolutely.
up. I think a lot of players, and I certainly have felt this over the years sometimes, is that you don't want to, there's something you don't want to be that guy or that girl doing all these strenuous warm-ups and then hitting a rotter off the first tee. I think there's an element of a bit of self-consciousness to it. Whereas actually you wouldn't do any other sport, you wouldn't not warm up.
Absolutely.
And as you say, we know golf, you're putting your body through a huge range of motion and actually trying to fire really fast.
Absolutely.
And the risk of injury is really quite high.
It is. And especially because of what we said earlier, with most amateur golfers being in this sort of position for so much of the week, these areas aren't ready for hitting a golf ball and for swinging quickly. So, and then, you know, just simple arm circles as well, obviously. You need that external rotation in the shoulder. You've got to be able to flex and get all the way around here to finish and externally rotate with the left if you're a right-handed player. We need those movements. So just simply loosening up like that. You can obviously do that in the locker room or at home. But yes, if you're waiting for the previous group, they're just halfway down the fairway and you can't hit your tee shot yet, you might as well do something constructive with that time. So the other area is the neck, and that's often overlooked. But if the neck isn't warmed up, we're obviously going to struggle. If I'm taking my backswing, I'm actually looking all the way over my left shoulder like this. So if I can't do that, it's going to be very difficult for me to stand, make a turn, and hit a shot because I can't freely turn. And I'm sure that's something that you see in the Bay quite a lot, Simon, when people are talking about issues or feeling like they can't turn freely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a bit that, as you've just said, it's overlooked. I think most people are conscious that the back needs to be mobilised and potentially maybe even shoulders. But this bit, actually, when you think how far the neck's got to move in the whole swing, it's doing full range of motion. And that holds a lot of tension.
It does, absolutely. And going back to our office position, on the phone, driving, on aeroplanes, very often people carry tension in the muscles that run from the tops of the shoulders into the neck and to the base of the skull. So they're often very common sources of pain and tension and restricted movement. So if people can't easily turn from one side to the other and pretty much get through 90 degrees, and they can't get the ear at least towards the shoulder without doing this or just feeling a real block, that's a sign that things are a bit stiff. And moving on to those things, I think the other thing just to say is that a lot of people wait until the neck or the back is a real problem rather than saying, oh, well, maybe I just need to loosen this up, maybe spend a little bit more time stretching during the week, or saying, oh, well, it's only a casual game this weekend, I might be better off sitting this one out and maybe getting a professional opinion if they need it. If you wait and you then try and ignore it, sometimes that can lead to problems, and you maybe have more extended periods of time away from the game, or you need to have more treatment than might otherwise have been necessary. So obviously you don't need to be calling someone up at the first little tightness or twinge, but just being a little bit sensible about those things and just looking after yourself sensibly, just so that you can play to your own satisfaction and enjoyment as much of the times as possible.
I think, and that's the key, as you said, most of, if not all of, everything you've just demonstrated there in terms of mobility, and that can be done at home. It doesn't require a gym, it doesn't require stretchy bands, they're useful, and obviously gym and general fitness is great to have, but in terms of range of motion is so key to playing golf. At whatever age you're at, it's naturally there when you're young, and it deteriorates. So actually, just doing a few things every day at home, just keeping your joints moving, one, just for general health, but for your golf
comfort
game
and well-being. Yeah, definitely.
Just a huge benefit.
Yeah, and that is absolutely true. I mean, I try and advise people to take little exercise micro breaks if they're working from home, or they can just stand up, have a stretch, move around during the course of the day in the working week. All of that helps. But yes, absolutely, most of the exercises and little routines that I teach people don't involve any huge amount of equipment or space. It's just about simply getting the right muscles loosened up, getting the joints moving, and preventing the accumulation of stiffness that lots of people can find can hamper their golf.
So I hope you found that useful. Some great insights from Stuart there, and things that are actually genuinely doable at home in your own time, doesn't take long to do. Just doing regularly is only going to help your golf game. Check out the other video we did a little while back on wrist injuries if you're interested in that. But hit the like button, subscribe, and if there are any other injuries you want us to talk about that go over from a physical mobility point of view or biomechanics standpoint, just let us know. We'll do our best to accommodate.